January 19th for NCBA ProVest webinar, How New and Future Technology Can Improve Your Firm's Operations and Compliance. I'm Nathan Wilner, NCBA's Government Affairs Officer, and I'd like to welcome you to today's event presented by ProVest. As we all know, technology continues to be a constant conversation and opportunity for all of us. Our vendor panelists will discuss the current landscape of technology and where we are headed in the future. Special thank you to webinar sponsor and Diamond Industry partner ProVest and Joel Rosenthal. A bit about ProVest. ProVest is the stable, sound, and secure process serving choice for collection litigators. ProVest offers service nationwide with more corporate-owned operated offices than any other server, rather than third-party affiliates. We understand that service rate and timelines are important, and we are able to exceed your expectations. ProVest value adds like eliminating manual data entry, scanning, skip tracing, and other services. ProVest is an NCBA certified vendor and meets the process serving standards, Summit compliance standards, and easy for their clients to audit remotely through a fully transparent 24/7 web portal. Innovative outsourcing programs, API, e-filing, sheriff management, pre-suit, post-service, deep data, and skip tracing of older inventory through their Trash to Treasure program is also a valuable service. Please note this webinar is not eligible for CLE accreditation. You have all joined this webinar in listen-only mode, which means you've been muted. This webinar is using the on-camera feature with our speakers and will not have the PowerPoint handouts available. Please know that this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be available via a follow-up email. During the presentation today, you may submit questions via the question box located on your control panel. Questions will be answered as time permits, so feel free to submit those questions throughout the program. And now for our famous legal disclaimer. While our panelists are not attorneys today, we are discussing issues regarding the law and law firms and attorneys. So this information is for the use of the webinar attendees only, and any distribution, reproduction, copying, or sale of this material or the contents hereof without consent is expressly prohibited. This information should not be construed as legal advice. Legal advice must be tailored to the specific circumstances of each case. Every effort has been made to ensure that this information is up to date as of the date of publication. It's not intended to be a full and exhaustive explanation of the law in any area. This information is not intended as legal advice and may not be used as legal advice. It should not be used to replace the advice of your own legal counsel. The opinions expressed are the views of the authors alone and should not be attributed to any other individual or entity. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. Keith Walch, Chief Acquisition Officer, Spring Oaks Capital. Walker White, CEO, Oliver Technology. Dave Pauken, CEO, Convoke. And last but not least, Joel Rosenthal, VP Sales Marketing at ProVest. And with that, I'm pleased to be able to turn this over to Joel to get us started.
Hey, thanks, Nathan, and we really appreciate NCBA having this webinar and giving us the opportunity for this education session. What we're going to be doing first is just everyone's going to give a little bit more on their background, and we'll go around starting with Keith.
Thanks, Joel. My name is Keith Walch. I'm the Chief Acquisitions Officer at Spring Oaks Capital, a tech-forward debt buyer. The majority of my background and career has been on the issuer side. I've worked mainly in operations, and then probably the last 10, 12 years all in recovery collections. Some of my former companies were MBNA America, Barclaycard US, and then Prosper Marketplace, a fintech lender, where I launched the recovery department. I'll turn it over to Walker.
Great, thanks Keith, and thanks Joel, and again, thanks to NCBA. Again, Walker White, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Oliver Technology Corporation. Oliver provides a collections litigation platform to help kind of automate and orchestrate the kind of repetitive regulatory and legal processes to help them drive increased revenue, maintain rigorous compliance, and really simplify the overall litigation effort. I actually come to this market not from collections at all, but rather as a pure software guy. Although we serve financial services, and I was really just drawn to the market because it represents a very rare opportunity for technology, as we'll dig into later today, that there's so much opportunity here to improve the technology and really kind of just change I think really change the game in the way we apply this and ensure that things remain compliant, and yet we're able to do a lot of work and ultimately help those customers, like the creditors, help their customers in the default management process. So glad to be here, and thanks for the time.
Dave?
My name is Dave Pauken. I'm the CEO of Convoke. I've been involved in this industry since 2010. So at this point, a fair amount of experience serving the industry. Convoke is a software as a service platform, and we aim to provide a modern recovery management system for credit issuers to help them with their collection and recovery needs. It's a central platform for post-charge-off and pre-charge-off accounts, and we help our customers optimize and improve performance and stay compliant. And I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this webinar today. Thank you, Joel, and thank you to the NCBA.
Thanks, gentlemen. So just briefly on me, and first of all, I want to apologize for being the underdressed one. I flew in 2 hours ago to my mother's 95th birthday party in Arizona, so I think I have a good excuse, but sorry for being a little more casual. But I'm Joel Rosenthal, as Nathan mentioned earlier, VP of Sales and Marketing at ProVest. I'm 20 years in the collection industry. I did 10 years on the debt buying side with Unifund, and then 10 years on the vendor side with the process serving industry. So we're going to start off with a question, which will go around the horn to everybody, and hear what everyone has to say from their company and personal perspective. So using technology today, how are the panelist companies using technology to operate their business, promote fair treatment of consumers, remain compliant, and grow their top line? And Keith will start us off.
Sure. Thank you, Joel. So yes, so Spring Oaks Capital, debt purchaser, one of the first of its kind, becoming a little bit more tech forward. We use it, information security is a big one. I think all of us will have touch points on this one, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but data protection, is the name of the game in this industry. One of the first initiatives that we took was a machine learning dialer strategy. This was a huge win for us. All information from all customer contact channels gets fed into this. It helps us with our dialer strategy. It was an immediate lift on the right party contacts. A straight up J curve, if you will. It has not come back down. As this information comes in, it just learns and gets better and better and better. It takes a little bit of the human element out of it. And it really just, was a hugely impactful initiative for us. The other one on this side, is, a great self-service portal. This was really needed. If you're going to call yourself tech forward, you really need to have a first-rate, payment portal. This is customer friendly, it's efficient, it's dynamic. We have the ownership of it so that we can make the changes as we see fit. This was key for both our text and email strategies. You didn't want to just blow up your inbound calls with people responding to your text and your emails. You needed to drive them to a self-service portal. It is now nearly 50-50 in terms of payments for collection agents versus self-serve. Another piece that we have here, we've started a cloud-centric database. So the architecture that is built, all this information is fed into it. So this is your customer contact channels, your right party contacts, your payments, your compliance, everything feeds into it. So it makes us a little bit more scalable. As this learns, we learn some of the pinging points. What has worked? What works? Does a dialer strategy work versus a text or an email strategy? What letters work? What letters don't? All of this information comes in. As complaints come in, we can see what the drivers are. All of this information drives our business. Additionally, just kind of sticking with the compliance, You have all the dynamic changes that take place in our industry, regulations, call restrictions, anything like that. All of this is fed into our cloud-centric database, and we use it for cost-effective performance optimization, as well as compliance and risk aversion. So a lot of things we're using it for. Joel, do you want to kick off what you're doing with it?
Yeah, I'll tell you some things from our company's perspective. So I'll highlight 3 items for us. We've come up with some streamlining and linking of processes through technology. So typically in the industry, the skip tracing and the subsequent aliases that could be created from that for later in the process after a non-serve are not really that well integrated. We've come up with a process that allows clients to have us skip and then have their alias templates stored, create the documents based on their direction, and then in states that require attorney review or signature, it can go back to the attorneys via an FTP, for example, and then come right back via the same method and go right out for service. So it's integrating and linking a bunch of steps. So that's something that I'd like to mention. The other 2 are sort of within with bot technology and machine learning. We're doing quite a bit of development and implementation in those 2 areas. So on bot technology, we're doing automation that improves speed and as well as greater accuracy. And some examples of categories for that would be data retrieval, document indexing, and then messaging. So things that humans were doing before they're sort of very repetitive, can be automated through bot technology. And on the machine learning side, it's monitoring for continuous performance. It's data matching, for example, and then creating exception-only processes for ideas and trends, for example. So I think those are some examples from ProVest's experience. And Walker, if you want to go on next.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Joel. From an Oliver perspective, the question of how the panelist companies using their technology in their business, and Oliver is a cloud business, as cloud a business as there is, like no assets, no local storage. Audits for us are really easy because we just we don't have anything for them to really audit. There's nothing to store and so on. But however, what we do for our customers is really provide the technologies that are really required, and we see as kind of this emerging compliance economy where as an industry, we need to remember we're serving the lenders serve the consumers, and they're both tied at the hip to the regulators. So in order to treat those customers well, we really see they're kind of 2 key areas of technology, and then a 3rd area of process that we really spend our time on, and then I'll give you kind of a 4th one. But from a technology perspective, and I'll talk more about it a little bit later, but we just believe that you need to codify and embed compliance into the technology. It's complex what we do. It's varied, but it is well known, and it is a finite process, and that can be captured by really good technology. So kind of capturing the compliance in the solution itself, and kind of creating those guardrails for how far it can go. And the second thing is really an engine that helps, a technology that helps kind of move things through the process. So it's not just keeping it on the road between the guardrails, but actually moving it down the road, and the handoffs that are required from the creditor to the firm, to skip tracing, to asset searching, to appearance counsel, and all the various parties that make up that workflow process and orchestration that ultimately brings the consumers and lenders and the regulators all together in one big picture there. The kind of the 3rd area that's related to technology, but I think is really important here, is also the user experience aspect of this. most of the systems that we operate in today in the default management space are, they're not great, right? A lot of them are not great, and so there's a lot that can be done to improve compliance by making it basically easier to lose the solutions and avoiding the pitfalls of just doing the wrong thing. Guided processes, Socratic processes, predictive technologies, and so on that go into kind of leading the users down the path. And then the last area that we're spending a lot of time is it's not necessarily technology per se, but it is the processes of the non-legal work, and really building out capabilities in that area for levels of quality that have manufacturing grade levels of quality, right? That we can perform the same activities the same every single time, and that's a critical part of compliance, right? That you do the same thing the exact same way every single time. And so those are the areas that we're really focused on and bringing to the customers in our space. So over to you, Dave.
Hey, thank you, Walker. Joel, I would say there's probably three areas maybe I'd like to focus on. First is the supply chain of information between credit issuers or debt buyers and their third parties. The second one is transparency into third-party collection actions, and the third one is security. So those are three areas top of mind for Convoke when we think about technologies that the industry is using to promote fair treatment of consumers. The first one, the supply chain of information, we all got a reminder here the last couple of weeks in the CFPB action against Forrester and Garbus, which was released just a couple of weeks ago, that action. And look, most everybody is doing this now, but it was another really helpful reminder on getting media and data from credit issuers and debt buyers to the law firms so they can pursue the collection process. And so, we see upwards of 130 different types of documents credit issuers have at one time or another or need to provide to a law firm, and all sorts of data that has to get to them. And then on the other side of that, when it comes to oversight, you need media and data back from the law firm to have a witness into what they're doing, so that oversight can be done. And so it's we shouldn't underestimate the challenge of the supply chain between credit issuers and third parties, particularly law firms. So that's one area. The second one, on the transparency into the third-party collection actions, we're seeing technology being used to make that transparency possible. As we all know, the credit issuer is ultimately, or the debt buyer is ultimately responsible for the activities of that law firm. Oliver Technologies has a solution for this. Convoke has a solution for this. It's a really important element for the owner of the debt to be able to observe and see those collections actions, so that if somebody's going off the rails, it can be corrected. So that's another area. And then the third one that we see has to do with security. Look, it's a high-profile industry, collections and recovery. It's aggravated by the fact that the industry has, by necessity, to deal with PII. And so security sits over everything that we do, everything from business continuity to incident management to auditing, security awareness, encryption, all of that. We see the law firms, the credit issuers, the debt buyers who are litigating to collect debt need security solutions. That concludes my remarks, Joe. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Our next question relates to future technology needs. What visibility do the panelists have into near future technology? What are the demands of the market, consumers, and regulators? And Keith will start us off again.
Cool. Thank you, Joe. So the three that I'd like to talk about are omni-channel optimization, self-service enhancement, and then dynamic system controls. So omni-channel optimization, will be for scalability, for compliance, and for cost-effective performance. We want to continue to focus on the customer touch points. Where and when do they want the outreach? Where and when do they want self-service? More or less emails, more or less texts. We want to make sure that we're optimizing the cost to collect, make it a little bit more, or make it less expensive, more compliant, and more flexible avenues of repayment. The self-service enhancement needs to remain dynamic. Continue to enhance the digital platform to offer longer payment terms, multiple settlement options. Can we offer more payment solutions on the portal? Can we drive them to our text channel? Can we drive them to anything like that? How can we use text more seamlessly? Is it a one touch point? Payment reminders, settlement offers through text. So anything there to kind of help that self-service platform. And then also have dynamic system controls. I think we've mentioned, all of us here, that we live in a highly regulated market. Changes come, at us a dime a dozen. More controls by the state level, more regulatory body controls. Are we able to be nimble enough and dynamic enough, to stay on top of these, implement these as they come in, so that business is not impacted. Having the technology in place keeps it scalable and manageable, and able to make change very, very effective and efficient. Joel, how about you?
So a few things from us. I think that the most interesting one that we're working on is we're in fairly far along in beta testing, and I think we're ready to start rolling it out. Is a IDAP Power BI client portal, and so this is sort of next gen on the client portal, and it's dashboard based with both graphics and ability to look at the underlying data. And what's interesting about it is it's not stock reports. So it is client-friendly reporting, so that fields and search parameters can be customized. And it's pretty cool. If anybody is on this session as a participant who's a ProVest client and it's something you want to see or whatnot, please feel free to contact me after the call, and be happy to have you guys see a demo of it. And then I think, just we're increasingly going to be rolling out more machine learning, more bot technology that I spoke to earlier. But that's, we're doing quite a bit of it, but it's still, it's beyond the early stages, but it's a long way from full development of what ideas we have for those. So over to you, Walker.
Great, thanks, Joel. Dave just mentioned security, and I agree that's it's an enormous topic. I think often when people talk about security, IT security is the one that kind of pops into their mind. And obviously, even in our industry, we've had some really remarkable breaches in the last just 12 months here. Sophisticated systems going down for a month, right? With ransomware attacks and so on. Just really, really dramatic to see it in action. However, and as Dave pointed out, we manage PII, and I think that, and I think Oliver believe that data privacy, data provenance, and DRM, digital rights management, are going to come into our market very, very quickly, and it's going to affect the market, the consumers, the regulators, everyone. And in that, data privacy is paramount. The CFPB just, snuck out a little outline of proposal and alternatives under consideration in October. And if you read through it and you're familiar with data privacy and data provenance rules, what you see in there is GDPR, right? And for those that are, which is basically, the right to be forgotten, right? So beyond just capturing preference information like we're doing with Reg F, once an account is settled, for example, we're talking about the consumer's data being 100% removed from lender systems, right? Again, the right to be forgotten. And I just think that from my experience, what I've seen, the lenders are really not prepared for this externality, and it represents one of those externalities that really can rock an industry. But your ability as a consumer to say, hey, I have paid off my debt with you, Mr. Creditor, and I want my data back. I want you to surrender it all, and I want you to I want you to rep and warrant that you've gotten rid of it at this point. So these are technologies, DRM technologies, that we are going to need to take on. The people that are actually housing that PII data, I think, are going to need to take on and take them very, very seriously over the coming. I want it's not in the next month, but I don't think it's excuse me, the next quarter, but I don't think it's 2 years away. I think we need to be prepared for that, and it's going to be big. The second one, I think, is the real opportunity, really for everyone in the market, because we're talking about the demands of the market, the consumers, and the regulators. It's really the potential for standardization of the audit processes and audit solutions. And it seems like such a boring thing to try to improve upon. But when I know that Dave and I have talked a lot about the amount of audit that we go through with our partners and firms go through, just like running down the edges, let alone. That's just dealing with the client, let alone when we're in a position where we are actually dealing with the actual regulatory bodies, be they federal or state and local. So a way to get really, really powerful, standardized, and deep audit information, because it's not a question of whether we're going to be audited, it's just a question of when. And I think that is something that is really going to be beneficial to the credits, the firms, the regulators, and the technology providers, and it plays very well into kind of the trajectory of technology and data technologies, which we are all part of, which is about the democratization of data, right? This data doesn't belong to Oliver, it doesn't belong to Convoke, it belongs to the lender, it belongs to the consumer, and we are just a steward of it for a period of time, it's theirs to use and operate on. And I think that's very different from, I think, the way this industry is operated. But I assure you that all the other industries operate that way now, because they're getting ahead of the problem, which is at the top of that, which is data privacy, and it's the way it's going to push into our industry. So, Dave, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Walker. We're seeing interest in three primary new technologies in our business. The first one is what I would call a cost-effective modern recovery management that credit issuers and debt buyers are looking for. The second one has to do with better business intelligence from the third parties. And the third one, I'll put in the category of consumer relationship management. So those are the three areas. The first one, on cost-effective modern recovery management, there are some big systems out there like CACS and Debt Manager that bigger banks and institutions use. Those aren't cost-effective, those aren't modern, and not particularly useful to a big part of the market, particularly fintechs, smaller banks, credit unions, and debt buyers. And so we see a pretty strong need out there for cost-effective recovery management, something that ingests and integrates post-charge-off balance data, something that keeps track and combines and standardizes the data from multiple systems internally at the credit issuer and from the third party, something that keeps the balances up to date for the credit issuer, a constant nagging problem, and something that handles the blocking and tackling, the basic journal entries and general ledger activity that the credit issuer needs to account for when dealing with collections out at third parties. So anyway, we see a need in the market for this, something that's cost effective, a SaaS solution. The second one that we're hearing a lot about is better business intelligence. Look, we've been working on this for a long time. Walker's company works on it as well, providing actionable, useful information to the creditor or the debt buyer on what's going on at the third-party collection channel, and in this case, law firms. So seeing performance data instantly and on dashboards, abilities to identify opportunities where underperformance is occurring, or if you see overperformance, knowing that so that you can understand why that's occurring and maybe replicate it in other places. Deploying API integrations better. We observe that's always been a challenge in this industry. And then, expanding into A/B testing better, so that there are more appropriate, useful champion challengers. You can automate with experiments in approaches to collecting accounts, and then some competitive benchmarking as well. So that's what I'd put in the category of better business intelligence. And then when it comes to consumer relationship management, being able to integrate the data from all the collection channels, whether it's law firms, agencies, wherever the collection channel resides. There are literally hundreds of data categories. Last count, I think we've observed over 500 different data categories out there at law firms and agencies. So integrating this data, being able to house all the data in a unified location is super useful. And having a data model that's flexible so that you can bring in data from outside the credit issuer, from outside the law firm or agency, and ingest other data so that you can run analytics and modeling and understand your consumer, your customer better. So those are the three areas: modern recovery management, better business intelligence, and consumer relationship management that we see in the market where there's interest.
Thanks, Dave. Our third topic is regulator-friendly technology. What are some examples of technologies being used today that promote compliance with regulatory requirements? Keith?
Sure, thank you, Joel. These aren't, very, very, new topics, but they are important ones. So speech analytics, it's a big portion of the regulator-friendly technology. The communication channel preference tracking is another one that we use, and then secure data practices and risk aversion. Going back to speech analytics, it's really great to say that all calls are scored for compliance, not just the ones that were reviewed for call listening. When you're saying, hey, 100% to a regulator as opposed to just the ones that we reviewed, it's a great win in terms of demonstrating compliance. This also helps, now we can target the ones where we feel for performance, where it could be, hey, we could have been a little bit more empathetic here, or hey, there's a different collection technique that could have been used to optimize that right party contact. The communication channel, right now it's, what does the customer want to do? How do they want to communicate? Regulators find this as a great customer friendly type of approach. Do you want to use text? Do you want to use email? Do you still like to have a voice call? I'll be candid, there is not only is it customer friendly, but it also is cost effective. Why call 3 times a month or 4 times a month when, one text suffices? So there is a cost benefit piece to that as well. Additionally, for the secure data practices and risk aversion, we use the technology today to eliminate human errors. You know what I mean? You can't call too many times in 1 week. If you can't have if the account's not presented, you can't call Hawaii too early if the call's not presented. So your basic one's there. But then in this space, as Walker was alluding to, PII is a big portion of our industry. We have to have it to substantiate the debt, to be able to substantiate the customer, and that needs to be protected. All of these new fintechs that are out there their livelihood is all online. So we need to be able to demonstrate that we can protect their data as well as they can. So Joel, those are just some of the things that we use the technology that are consumer friendly or regulator friendly.
Thanks, Heath. It's interesting that the first item I was going to mention about our company, also for our obviously very different business model you do, but it's also our 100% review rather than looking at it spot checking kind of viewpoint. So what we have is for our process serving business, we have an internal audit dashboard that we built out that looks at 10 different data points, and we're able to review through this, efficiently review every attempt by every server every day, similar to the phone calls that you were mentioning in your business, and as the consumer touch point, frankly. So two examples of those 10 data points would be proximity and feasibility. So in our business, proximity would be when a process server makes an attempt or successfully serves, there's a photo taken on their smartphone app which captures GPS information. So one can analyze and review the GPS proximity of that photo versus the actual address that should be contacted. So we're able to review that. And obviously, if somebody's 50 feet away versus 2 miles away, that may indicate something. The other is feasibility. So in our industry, the process serving industry, there's been some historical issues prior to having auditable technology that process servers were doing what's called sewer service of filling out affidavits that they served somebody but never really doing it. And there's been cases of where people were filling out affidavits that they were hundreds of miles away from each other within very short periods of time. So once again, using that GPS and then the associated time date stamping. So all of you who don't know that, your phones do that. So you don't commit any crimes because you'll while you're taking photos. So it captures all of that, and then we're able to then analyze if the route that the server took was feasible, for example. And then there's 8, I won't bore you with other examples, so that there's 8 other data points that we check as well. Then the second item I wanted to mention of 2 is in the, I think it was early 4th quarter last year, we rolled out a exportable PDF document that has all of that information in it, so that if a client is challenged in court or by any other legal body, they have all of that in their system, so that if we, God forbid, disappeared, and then 3 years later somebody's garnishing wages or on a service that was made 3 years ago that resulted in a default judgment, they have all of that information that yes, they were served originally, and that it's not just some big surprise to them 3 years later. And so that's exportable, so that's on the client system. We retain that forever on our side as well. But those would be 2 examples for us. Walker, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joel. Again, and again, the question is what technology we use to really promote compliance. And this is an area where there's a lot of conversation at a technical level about AI and ML, and I think sometimes these are overused technologies. If you probably have seen in the news about ChatGPT. ChatGPT is real AI for those who haven't had a chance to look at it. You don't need to sweat it just yet. The compute power required to do what ChatGPT does is just way off the charts, and so we're safe from Skynet for now. But look, the reality is the kind of technology that we're talking about here is for regulatory requirements starts with rules engines. These are very, very straightforward. There are tens of these in the open source and public domain, and we use one, a fairly sophisticated one. And as I mentioned at the outset here, I come to the business as a software person, right? I was drawn to it by the opportunity to automate this business. But you know, I was told when I got here, like, hey, calculating post-judgment interest is really, really complicated. You got 50 states, and like they all have like these different rules and so on and so forth. But and that's like, wow, if you don't know anything about the market, you're like, wow, that's okay. Like, let's dig into that. Well, if you look at it, if you break it down to a language that can be understood and taught to a computer, like, hey, here are the things that you have to do for post-judgment interest. There are 53 rules that you need to apply. 53. Right? Just to put that in perspective for you, the former company I ran was a data as a service company, and we had 83 million rules, and we generated between 24 and 27,000 more rules every single day. So I encourage you that, like, the ability to teach a computer to follow a set of instructions and rules is very well known, it's very well understood, and can be applied really, really well to this market. And then, like TurboTax, you can codify all this stuff into a machine, and then that machine does the same thing and responds the exact same way every single time, right? It doesn't lose sleep. It's not cranky. It just does what you tell it to do, and with great accuracy all the time. So, and when we think about regulators, though, we also look beyond the regulators and really into the internal regulators, because remember that, like, using a rules engine, you can set up like the known boundaries of what is required at a federal, state, local, and even venue specific level, right down to the literally at this courthouse. You know, at this courthouse over here, you have to do this, but at this one, you got to do that, right? Like, so you can codify all that stuff and make sure that all those things happen. But inside of a business, right, our creditor clients, some of them, they have widely different risk tolerances in various areas, right? You know, some will want to say, you know, hey, after a 35-day wait period, we send something on the 36th day, and others will be like, you know what, we're going to wait till 50 days, right? So with inside that boundary, you also want to give people the capability to set their own guardrails, right? And that should be able to be done by a business analyst. It shouldn't require a statement of work back to your vendor to, you know, go spend a ton of money and, you know, millions of dollars and thousands of lives to go, you know, build you a little piece of technology to make sure you tighten up your responsibilities there. So I think from our perspective, these are well-known technologies. They just haven't been brought to this market yet, and that's why, you know, personally, I'm excited, and I think all the team's excited that, like, we really can move the needle with some of these technologies that we're baking in. So really looking forward to it. So over to you, Dave.
Okay, thank you, Walker. You know, while Walker was talking, it sort of got me focused on the fact that when we think about technologies for compliance, there's a spectrum on it. There's some pretty basic things that help with compliance, and then there's what I would call things at the other end that are more sophisticated, like what Walker's talking about on rules engines. Okay, now maybe compared to his old business, it's not sophisticated, but for this industry, it is pretty sophisticated. I would take Walker, what you're talking about, if I may say. But, you know, look, on the less sophisticated side, but super, super important, is technologies to automate the delivery of media to the law firms. Okay, when an account gets placed, the file systems are automatically scraped. The 12 statements, the terms and conditions, the application, all get pulled by robots and lands in a secure server for a law firm. It sounds pretty basic, but absolutely critical to compliance. I think we all know that. So, you know, we're seeing that used quite significantly as a way to be compliant. You can extend that to all types of information that a law firm needs to make available to a credit issuer, scraping that out of their systems, whether they're using, you know, JST, Vertican, whatever their local system might be, pulling that out and making it available to the credit issuer so they can perform their oversight function. So, for example, are the law firms performing the military scrubs? Are they happening every 15 days, and is the right action taken once that occur? Are the bankruptcy scrubs occurring? Are complaints being resolved? Are VOD requests being resolved within the 30-day clock. All of that is pretty basic at one level, but really important to this industry, especially from a credit issuer perspective. Another area just has to do with how vendor management occurs. The basics of company work standards. Are they delivered? Are we getting them from a credit issuer to a third party? Are they being implemented? There's all kinds of ad hoc requests that occur that aren't even account related, whether it's insurance certificates, financial statements, like all of this basic stuff. We want to move well beyond secure email to do this, okay? And there are some terrific tools in place to make this easy and seamless. And then finally, just really useful exception reporting and dashboards so that the law firm knows where their problems are, and the credit issuer knows where their problems are, and they know where they're performing. So these are the kinds of things that we're seeing being used to improve compliance and care for the consumer.
Thank you very much. So we're going to shift segments. That concludes the first of our two segments. The second segment, we're going to go a little quicker through the questions. There's going to be a question, and then two panelists will respond to it. So the first one is for Keith and Dave. What types of technologies are available to improve operating efficiency and expand margins? And Keith, if you want to start off.
Sure. We've moved to a cloud-based environment, partly because it's more scalable in this day's environment. It's also very nimble, and it allows for a type of win-win situation. With all of this information coming in, you're able to be productive and efficient with the time and your optimization, but then also compliant and risk averse and avoiding risk. Both of these kind of, just to kind of bring it down a level, compliance and complaints cost a lot of money, okay? And it's a lot of time and focus. And I'll be candid, happy customers usually pay. So if you have all of the channels available to you to make them happy, to have them pay, you're now making a cost-effective type of process. The technologies that I would kind of push people to is identify cost benefits. It's more effective to, is the digital strategy less expensive to initiate than a calling strategy? Most likely. Letters versus emails. Which one costs more? Which ones are responded to? Emails and calling versus texts. There's a whole bunch of these that you can do. When to recall, when to place, what strategy to implement, and when. So having like the machine learning part comes, but having the data hub is really the important part of it. Just one that I would think right this minute I found is very fascinating to me is these voice bots right now. It's a multi-language collection agent where they are seamless in their transition between languages. That they go from French to Spanish, German, and they're able to react. It's kind of fascinating in terms of how well thought out this program is, but these are things that we're looking into to expand operating efficiency and costs. Dave?
Yeah, it's a little bit, I feel a little repetitive here, Joel, but a couple of thoughts come to mind here. The first is anytime you can reduce human error or automate a process by taking particularly human bottlenecks out of a process, these are areas I think to focus on. So there's some really interesting things happening in the audio area. Not to plug anybody, but an example that comes to mind is Prodigal. They have some very interesting technologies to help if you're on the phone capturing the notes, prompting, just some super efficient things to get people on the phone more, typing less, increasing accuracy. Always be looking at those kind of tools. The old way of doing things Like there's just so many new things out there like that. And then when it comes to digital engagement, that's another one. I think the industry can move much further down, and we're seeing that in a number of examples, getting past the phone and mail, and having a solution, portals, so that the consumer can come on and reach a settlement without having to interact or talk to a human being, and enter into a payment plan and make a payment. There are some terrific companies out there that are making solutions like this. Trata is one that comes to mind. And I think all of these increase margins, reduce error, and gives the consumer a better experience.
Thanks, Keith and Dave. The next question's for Walker and myself. Adopting new technology comes with substantial challenges. Weighing today's costs for tomorrow's benefits and savings can be difficult, and there are always obstacles and headaches to transitioning from one major system or tool to another. What are the panelists' thoughts on when and how to adopt newer technology, particularly on the legal collection side? Walker, if you want to start us off.
There we go. Sorry. Thank you. I think as noted in the question, it's right. Look at changing any system to IT systems is no small undertaking at any time. However, if you look across the entire consumer lending life cycle, from application origination, fulfillment, servicing, on to default management, there have been a lot of advances in some of those, and I don't think it's a shock to anyone on this call that default management is a real laggard at this point in comparison to the other areas of that overall lending life cycle. And I spoke earlier today about a little bit about user experience, and to give you just a quick analogy, I was telling the panelists before we joined here that I went to visit my mother, who's 85, 2 weeks ago, and she's coming to DC to visit us, and she had booked this multi-city ticket because she was going to also see a friend and so on. And when I was out with her, she was like, "Oh, we're not going to meet in Chicago. We're going to meet in Des Moines, right?" And not Des Moines, but it was actually Denver, but whatever it was, doesn't much matter. She went onto her phone and she basically changed the routing of a multi-city route, and no one ever told her how to use the United application, right? Like the complexity that has been taken out of these systems and built into the technology is so remarkable that here's my 85-year-old mother changing a flight, which even 5 years ago she would never been able to do. We're not smashing the atom here, right? We're not solving Newton's two-body problem, right? We are simply trying to automate and orchestrate a process that is complex and varied, but well-known and finite. And there are just better ways. And I just believe that while there are obstacles and there are headaches, right, to getting in the way of this, courage is going to win here, right? Because once one person moves and we start to see, even you just get the early adopters onto a new technology platform, the benefits are so compelling and so much larger that it's just going to relegate all the other ones. You'll have no choice. And so, the question is, do you want to be first? Do you want to be, you want to be last, right? And I think that there's really real power in first mover advantage. So that's my take, Joel.
Okay, thanks, Walker. I had two comments to the question. First is sort of on how to implement new technology, and the way we've done it, and this is maybe counterintuitive, is we test manually first a new technology and then automate it. And the reason for that is if you don't do it that way, in our experience, things can go off the rails. There'll be like a driverless car running amok. And unless you're monitoring that every second, you may not know it. And then all of a sudden your clients are the backstop, which you really don't ever want to have happen. So we come up with whatever new process it is, test it through manually, and then automate it. So replicating our manual experience. And then you do need to monitor it, because even if you do it that way, you could still have the things going off the rails and not noticing it. But it lowers the the likelihood of that and increases the success of the launch of the new technology. The other comment, and this is sort of, I'm probably dumbing down Walker's very higher intelligence comments that he made about the industry, is, you know, we have transparency into at ProVest to two industries, the collection industry and then also the legal foreclosure industry. And to Walker's point, the foreclosure industry in its legal software is fully and has been for a number of years on API technology, whereas the collection industry is still on typically daily flat files, and exchanging that and all the discomfort and data issues that happen all the time, and company, clients and vendors being out of sync with each other, all these issues that, you know, that multiply through the organization, billing and data and all kinds of things related to that, is so much cleaner with APIs technology. And thankfully the industry started to move that. Like Walker's product is purely that, and you know, commend you for launching that. And then some of the other larger existing vendors in the space are rolling things out and moving in that direction. JST has their access software they're going to be rolling out, and you know, so there's movement in that direction, what I think is great. And you know, Walker's been, I think, the leader and first one on that new approach. But I think that's to Walker's point about default management being a little bit behind. That would be sort of my dumbing it down for my non-technology folks such as myself. So the next question, I think we can squeeze in. Nathan, can we squeeze in one more, or you want me to stop? I'm gonna, without Nathan commenting, I'm gonna go.
Just one more. I'll give you one more.
Okay. So this is for Keith and Dave again. So evaluating the cost of new tech adoption can be fickle given the challenge in predicting value, particularly for problems that are more relevant to the future than the present. What suggestions do the panelists have to promote wise technology decision-making, i.e., what are the tips and traps to be aware of? And Keith, if you want to start off.
Sure. Thank you, Joel. So one, I would say benchmark, talk to your friends in the industry. What are they doing? What is it that you're trying to solve for? Many of us have the same issues, you know, across the board. You know, find out what it is, ask some people that you trust and see what they're doing. At least if maybe they don't have a solve, maybe they have an idea, and it kind of leads you down a good path. When you're doing it, have your subject matter experts that will be using whatever the technology is involved in the process. It's much easier to have the end user be able to give feedback up the chain as opposed to the top person saying, hey, this is how it works, and they're like, it's not even applicable. So have some subject matter experts in that process. In that process, when you're building it out, you'll have a strong pros and cons whether you're going to buy or build. Okay, so research what's out there. What can you buy that's off the shelf that can satisfy the business need today? What are those limitations? You know, is it a one-time, you know, solve? Know what the end product should probably look like, you know, as far into the future as you can. You're not going to be able to solve for everything. No one has a crystal ball, but think far ahead where, you know, how can it remain dynamic so you can make changes, you know, in our industry. This should not be a set it and forget it product. If you go down the build process, really think through the benefits of a proprietary product. You know, think how long it's going to take, how much time, how much cost, how many reevaluation and enhancements for it to be successful, and then kind of go back to where you initially started. Start with the benchmark. What worked? Was it proprietary? Yes, you can do it. Or how difficult was it? What product can do it? You know, what are the limitations of that product again? You know, kind of go back through and start the wheel over again before really deciding. That's the best way I can describe how to do it.
Thanks, Keith. Dave, we've got about 45 seconds, so I'm sorry to put you on the short leash. You're on mute, Dave.
sorry, Keith, you hit all the major points. The only thing I would add to what Keith said is that if you end up on a custom solution, which I would be very careful about thinking about doing that, remember that with software, you're never done. And so if you created something, you still have a cost in the future to maintain it and update it. And a lot of people forget about that. And it's a reason to go to companies that are building software for a living and updating it every week or every month. So that's just one other thing to keep in mind. But Keith did a great job summarizing the issues.
Well, thank you very much to the panel. Great job. And Nathan, if you want to take us to the finish line.
Yeah, so thank you. I mean, this was really a fantastic presentation. I really enjoyed listening myself. And just to think back when I was in law school, they told me one day you'll be able to do research on a computer. I guess we've gotten way past that. So thank you so much for giving us that insight. This is really great for our members, and we hope to have you back and follow up on some more of these type of technical and high-level issues that every one of our members has to deal with on a regular basis. So thank you very much. And finally, for our listeners, if you'd please complete the brief survey following the webinar. We count on your participation to guide our programming for the future. This concludes today's webinar. We thank you for your continued support for NCBA. Continue to look for upcoming education sessions on our website and at creditorsbar.org or in your NCBA newsletter on Thursdays. And with that, thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, NCBA. Thank you, Joel. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Dave.
Thanks,
Have a
everybody.
great day.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Ready to end the session.
Good.
I can't figure. I don't know how to turn off the thing.
I think you did actually, because we're back.